Welcome to the August edition of Mytech U. Thank you everyone who are listening, participating online, and for those of you who will be watching in the future as the session is recorded. Today we are going to be discussing how many people, IT folks and business owners are nervous about the free file sync tools that exist in the market today. Dropbox pretty much created this market several years ago, and now that it's gotten file sync tools and that type of technology has gotten a lot of adoption, there's some concerns that we should have that we've seen across our customer base from our customers and the different users. And we're going to go through some of the security risks that we think you all should be aware of. And we're going to do some demo. We're going to talk about benefits and capabilities. And Philip and I are going to put that on today. So Philip Holt, for those of you who do not know Philip, he is one of the founders of Mytech as well as our senior solution architect. And then myself will be leading you through this discussion today. As a point of clarification here, please use your questions button on the control panel, and you can ask questions, and we will work to interject those throughout the presentation, or we will follow up with you afterwards if we're not able to get to all of the questions during the presentation. So with that said, let's move along here. So as I mentioned today, we are going to start by Philip, can you advance that slide, please? Today we're going to talk about three main sections. The first section, we're going to talk about the key areas relative to security, and just things we want you to be aware of. We're going to then talk about the capabilities of the different business class synchronization tools that exist out there. We're definitely going to talk about some of the benefits, and then we're going to demonstrate some of the capabilities of a tool that we've identified meets the requirements that we feel comfortable with, that we feel comfortable with our customers using and recommending to our customers. And finally, we're going to have a summary relative to just the risks and options, just kind of put a total final recap on it. And some of the last bullet at the end of the slide, the presentation, really is for those that might get the slide deck afterwards. We can send that out because I wanted to just do a recap. I actually expect that going through the demonstration and questions, we probably won't get to that section, but we did put it in there to make sure that we can put a recap on it for everybody. So, all right, as we dig in here, the biggest concern that we see around a lot of these file sync tools is relative to security. The problem with free sync tools that exist today that are, especially if they're free, they're all consumer grade. So they don't build in all the features and capabilities that you normally get or that you will get in an enterprise class solution. So the tools that I'm talking about, for those of you who might not be familiar with file sync tools, I'm talking about Dropbox, Box.com, Google Drive, Microsoft SkyDrive, and SugarSync. And there's others out there, but if you've heard of any of those, this is the technology to which we're speaking today in particular. So as we move on, one of the things that you look at is that we see a lot of, from our help desk, we see a lot of people that have Dropbox or Box, one of these technologies installed on their system, that we're pretty sure that it wasn't necessarily a strategic organizational choice to do that. So what that means from a security perspective is, well, do you have any visibility to what data is being shared by your staff? Who are they sharing that information with? On what devices? Right? So the nice feature set of this technology is that it can be used pretty ubiquitously across all platforms, whether it's Windows, PC, etc. But it also can be used, you don't have any limitations of who they end up sharing it with, right? So is this going across, again, is this between different organizations? Maybe it's your peers, maybe it's competitors. Are they sharing with friends, family? What about personal devices? Do you want your corporate information on personal devices like maybe a personal iPad, a home desktop, or a home laptop, or somebody's smartphone? What are you going to do about that if that device gets lost? What if there's secured confidential information that's your customer information that ends up being synchronized to personal devices and that gets lost? What kind of liability does that present to you? So that's one of the biggest areas that definitely want to touch on. We'll dig into some other features and capabilities of this later, but like I said, one of the biggest challenges that we see with this technology is that you just don't have visibility, you don't have control, and confidential information that your organization is responsible for keeping private is now completely outside of your bounds, your realm of control, and the ability to do that. So next, it's talk on encryption. So not only does this data get out there, but what level of encryption do you have? So let's say this data does get on a device that's a business-owned device. Is it encrypted? And not only is it encrypted when it's stored, is it encrypted when it transmits information? So in some of the solutions that I mentioned above, the Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, et cetera, some of them don't even have encryption at all. If they do have encryption, one thing that happened back in August of 2012 with Dropbox is that they used a shared public key, which means that all their customers, basically they use the same encryption key across all their customers. So once that one key was broken, people were able to steal usernames and passwords across their entire customer base, and then were able to then get access to files, as opposed to having a private encryption methodology where you, as organization A, has a unique encryption key from your organization B, et cetera, so that you're protected from a mass breach like what happened to Dropbox. You can Google that and look that up. And then in general, it's just not enterprise-grade encryption. So they use the ones that use encryption. It's at least encrypted, but it isn't necessarily up to the current standards that need to be held by, especially if you're subject to any regulatory body in the financial world or the government world, the military world, et cetera. So that's one of the risks that exists from a security perspective. And then finally, as I kind of touched on it earlier, when you don't have control of the data, is what happens if this device is lost, stolen? What if an employee exits the organization one way or the other? Do you have the ability to get rid of that information? How are you going to, do you know what they have? Do you have the ability to get rid of it or to pull it back? So those are some of the key things around Dropboxes. You don't even know what's out there, and you don't have control of it. You don't have visibility into it. And even if you did have visibility, some of it's not even encrypted to the standards that are to the class of solution that you would require for most businesses. So that's at a high level. Some of that's probably a little technical, and hopefully that didn't bog you down too much. But definitely wanted to impress upon the point of the security concerns that we have around the consumer-grade products that are out there today. So as we move along here, so the capabilities that you should expect from a business class solution, something that actually would enable you to proactively, strategically, with intent, start collaborating and working with your team to do file synchronization, to enable mobility, to allow you to potentially work with vendors, to allow you to potentially work with guests, maybe large file sending, things like that. So first and foremost, having a centralized management of all the users and the devices. You can control, so the exact opposite of the consumer grade stuff. You'd have a dashboard to be able to see everyone that's attached, activity logs, everything that's going on. You have the ability to say, all right, say I want to share a file with one of my customers, and I just want them to be able to view this file for the next 30 days. So I can create that account. I can then give them access to that file, and I can automatically expire that file. And then I would also see and be able to audit when they'd accessed it, if they can change it, things like that. So you have a control, and you can do that at your own users from your organization level as well. And then as well as the next one is being able to do a team sharing structure, where if you have an accounting team or a marketing team or an engineering team, you can actually just like your server that you may have in your organization, and you can restrict permissions to who has access to what folder structure. You can do the same thing with business class tools that we'll be talking about in the demonstration a little bit later. All right, next, Philip, please. Then the other piece that's very nice with this technology, as the proliferation of mobile devices, the proliferation of tablets, people working from home, people working from hotels and coffee shops, they need access to information across not only their smartphone, but tablets, laptops, and desktops, whether they have a Mac or a PC. So cross-platform compatibility is pretty incredible, not only on iOS, Android, but as well as Windows phones, indeed. So those are some of the capabilities you should expect from these solutions that are out there today. And the last one, that we won't dig into the technology piece of this, but if you're not, as an enterprise class or the business class grade encryption is really what I want to take away, is that if you're not using this level of encryption, it's probably not going to meet your requirements if you have any type of regulated industry, right? Whether it be financial, military, government, healthcare, et cetera. And then the other key point on this one that I definitely want you to know is that it's not only when the data sits on the device is the information encrypted, but it's also when the information is in transit between devices, when it's synchronizing. So that way, if the device is lost, it actually can be, we can pull the information and the data is encrypted as well. So that's just something that you should expect from a business class solution. Moving on to the next one, you should also be able to manage data retention. Storing information in the cloud or locally on your own server, it costs money, right? Because the more your data grows, the more it costs because it takes up more space. So there's ways that you should be able to manage at a global level the retention. How many revisions do you want to keep? If a revision hasn't been used in X period of time, how can you get rid of it? Can you automatically expire these things to help, instead of having a person in your organization have to manually interact and engage with those features, you can actually set that as a policy at the organizational level. Philip will touch on that a little bit later as well as your total data storage. So for instance, let's say if you want to set a threshold of a terabyte, let's just throw that simple number out there, or 1,000 gigs. Well, once you hit certain thresholds, let's manage that, right? So you can set alerts around those thresholds, and being also able to manage certain file types. Maybe, for instance, your organization doesn't want to share video files. Maybe they're either too big because you don't want them to hit your internet bandwidth, or maybe that's not the type of files you want syncing, or maybe that's your copyrighted material, right? Maybe that's something that you invested so much time and effort into those types of files that you can restrict based on file types and or size. So if you don't want file sizes over a certain 300 megs, for instance, or whatever the limitation, you can start setting some of those restrictions to help not only manage the data retention, the total data storage, but as well as potentially mitigate risk of certain files leaving your organization that you might not want to leave your organization in a tool like this, right? So again, having the capability to do that is a feature or a benefit of these types of tools. Philip, I guess, feel free to interject as well. I know that you're going to be taking the lead on the demonstration part, but I definitely don't want to lose any of your commentary that you might be able to offer in this section at the moment. One of the other feature sets is Active Directory integration. As different solutions and tool sets evolve in the technology place, users are getting inundated with having to manage multiple different usernames and passwords. Not only are users getting inundated with that, but organization administrators are also getting inundated. They already have one, typically they already have, if they're running Active Directory, which any Windows organization network typically is. If you can manage that one username and account base, then you can also manage this. So it's one way in which you can simplify the user experience and simplify the administrative level experience as opposed to managing multiple sets of username and password data. The next section I would say is, as we talked about with regard to security, is being able to remotely wipe the device. So that if a device is lost or stolen, from a global administrative perspective, you can actually remove the files, remove that device or unlink that device, and then remove the files, remove access. Of course, if you have Active Directory integration, you can also just disable the user, and that'll also disable their ability to connect. It could also be upon an employee exit, as well as at a global management perspective, you can allow or disallow a user to be able to add additional devices. So you can choose whether or not a user can connect their iPad. If you don't want them to be able to do that, you can restrict that. So that's one of the things that also you should expect from an enterprise or a business class sync tool capability. All right, finally, one of the things that's nice here with regard to custom branding and logo is that if you are an organization and you might use this tool to extend your collaboration to your vendors or customers, being able to have a branded logo, putting your logo up there and having your customers or vendors experience your brand or at least see your brand logo, that would be kind of nice from an integration perspective. It also might be if you're just, as an organization, you are concerned about image and you want to present your staff with that image as well, have the ability to do custom branding in a logo. This is definitely a request that we get from a lot of customers to help, I don't know, kind of get that feel across the people with whom they're collaborating. So that's really the key benefits and features that you should expect from some business class tools. We're going to demonstrate those, as well as some of the risks that you should be aware of relative to consumer grade components. And now Philip's actually going to take us through a demo of the technology, and we're going to start on the user side, so looking at what is a user experience. And then we're going to talk about, all right, some of the administrative level capabilities that we showed. So he's going to show you some of the things we just talked about from a demonstration perspective. So Philip, if you are ready, it looks like you are. Definitely like to hand it over to you, and I'll interject or with questions from the audience.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks for setting me up so well. Good morning, everyone. What we're looking at here is I'm going to give you a little bit of demo of the Mytech Sync tool that we're currently rolling out to folks, and kind of give you a little bit of quick tour and kind of show you what Nathan's talked about. Of course, the demo is going to be a little short this morning. We have a limited amount of time. There's no way we can show all of the features, but I want to try and touch on a lot of the items that Nathan discussed. So first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to log in here to the Sync tool site. And the first thing I'm going to point out here is I'm currently working in a user called Demo User. So I've set up this context as a normal user, as someone who's just a member of my organization. And we're going to start out and we're going to see real quickly, this is just kind of a listing of the files that we have in the file sites. And this does not differentiate itself much from any of the other tools that are out there. But one of the things that it does allow us to do, we'll just kind of go couple through some of these features. One, we have the branding ability. Nathan touched on that a little bit, is how it gives people kind of a homey feel to their site. But it's also a good feature to have with regards to security. So that people understand if they're logging onto a site or if it's a guest coming to your site, that they know that they've gotten to the right place because they see that logo, and so they know that they're connecting to the right location. We also have customized URLs. So you'll see that the URL up here also is unique to this organization we're demonstrating, which we've called Mytech U. We have some pretty straight functions. We have a folder team here, and we've got some files that are attached. And you see this file is actually grayed out because what I have is I have told the system to show me deleted files. So that initially is kind of an extra feature that we don't have on some other file sharing options. I have the ability to restore or go to previous version. At any time, if I want to upload a file, of course, I can simply go ahead and upload a file. And using that tool, I can identify a file I have somewhere out on my network. So, for example, I have a file here. Or I can go ahead and upload and drag and drop the Mytech phone list. That's going to go ahead and upload. And when I come back to my file listing, I'll see that I now have my phone list, which I could view simply by clicking on it and getting a listing of all those phone numbers, which we'll hide real quickly here so we don't work with that.
So Philip, you're creating, we're going to demonstrate adding a file. So it looks like one of the capabilities that's nice is you can either add the file from clicking on a button and browsing, and you can also just drag and drop the file into the tool. You can do it a couple different ways.
That's correct. So I'm logging back in here. My web browser shut us out, but we'll jump right back in here into our site. And of course, all this is great and well that I can log in and see this to the website, but that's not how we normally use this.
I'm actually not seeing your screen. Looks like it's I don't know if frozen is the right word, but I see the file upload section here right now. So on your screen, that's what your screen is showing.
Great.
There we go. There we go. Now we're back. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. So I'm back, and we can see that file has appeared. I won't make the mistake of clicking that on again. It opened up a window in my same browser. But I just wanted to show you that's available. Of course, normally that's not how we use these files, and that's not how we want to access these files. We prefer to access files by using my local file shares. And to that end, like a lot of the other solutions, I'm able to download an agent. So in this case, we have the ability to download a Windows agent, Mac agent. All the kind of major mobile platforms are supported. And I've already done so in the background here, but I'd like to show you the install is pretty quick. It's a small download, and then it allows us to install the application, which is a simple kind of click-through operation, at which point it comes in and asks me, what do I want to sync? So it's as easy as simply typing in the credentials that we're using. In this case, it's an email address, but as Nathan mentioned, this could be Active Directory integrated. When I do that and type enter, it's going to go ahead and ask me for typical setup. I'm going to say yes, and it's going to connect and launch, and it's going to synchronize the files between my logon and a folder, which it's going to create for us. On my unit.
One of the things I like to show on this screen, Philip, is that when you click on the download app, it shows the I know you mentioned this, but the different agents you can install on your machine. Again, it's Windows, Mac, iOS, etc. So for Android, so on. So
sure. So what's happened here in the background is it's connected, and I see now that on my desktop folder I have a folder called Synced Folder, and inside of that folder I have files that we saw previously on the screen. So we can see those line up, and that's great. And if I create a new file out here, which I could do, create a Word file. I can go and edit that file. And of course, as we'd expect, that file is going to sync up. I can now see that document is available and when it was created. So this is all pretty standard stuff for the type of agent that we're looking at. But what I'd like to show you is a couple things that differentiate this tool. What I pulled up here is I pulled up the actual preferences to the syncing agent. Unlike some of the other products that are out there, you don't have a lot of control over what's being uploaded, how often it's being uploaded, and what kind of bandwidth it's being consumed. So here you can see with this tool, we do have the ability to limit both the upload and download speeds if we wanted to. We can also change the sync folder location that we're using. And we can identify if there are certain files that I did not want to include, perhaps temp folders or some kind of other files. And additionally, it gives me an activity list explaining what I've done and all of what it's doing in the background. So I can see that we just upgraded that test doc file was added. Okay, so that's great. What else can we do? Well, I can go back and I can see previous revisions of this file if I'd like to. I can certainly delete it. I could also share it with other people. And by sharing with other people, I can either share with people within my organization or also without. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. What I'd like to do now at this point is to move over to actually the administrative side of this. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new web browser here. You'll see I'm using Chrome now, I think. And I'm going to log in as a different user context. And when I log in this dashboard, we're going to see that I now log in as the demo admin. The demo admin is nothing more than a regular user. In fact, if I look at the files section of this user, I'll see that it looks very similar. I have some other documents, but it's very similar to the standard user. However, I have the addition of this extra organizational button. When I'm using this extra organizational settings, I have a lot of options in terms of what I can do, and I get that management that we were really talking about missing, that Nathan was discussing in the beginning. I have my ability to understand how much space I'm using, who's using that space, what types of, what accounts and machines are connecting. And also as I go to the settings, I have some ability to control some of the policies that are involved. So I can talk about what type of extensions are involved. I can talk about whether or not people are limited, either as an organization to size or individually to a size. I can certainly control the ability to perform some of those revisions that we were talking about. So every file that's uploaded, automatically, if I change it, there's a revision saved in the background. But I have some control over trimming that if I need to. Additionally, my authentication, of course, I can Active Directory integrate. This particular demonstration site is not Active Directory integrated, but that's available to us as well. In the branding section here, we can see that we have the ability to change both the logos and icons and the name of the product if we want to refer to it something else internally. Next, we'll take a peek here at the accounts view. So in the user context, of course, I don't have a good look at who else is able to see the system. But here, when I'm logged in as the administrative user, I can see the different accounts that are connected. And I can see that this is, in fact, the demo user that we were working with in the previous context, and this is the user we're working with now. And so I can, in fact, if I wanted to, see their files, if I was so permissioned. I can also see, for example, that which devices are connected and what they're using, and we can unlink them as well should the need arise to do that. If I have a new user to create, provisioning is pretty easy. I just create a new account, and as I do so, I can not only enter in their standard information, but I can give them a mobile phone number input there if I like, which would give them an ability to use a 2 form factor to unlock their account if they needed to. And I can also set up their individual quotas, and I can also add them to certain team shares. So adding new users is pretty straightforward. In fact, if I had a whole bunch to do the first time, I can, in fact, do just an import. So occasionally, if we have a large number of users who want to import, we can do it that way as well.
Hey, Philip, can you go back real quick to drop down one of the users that you showed that had the user demo there? One of the things that, as it relates to some of the information previously presented, this is also where, as an organizational admin, that not unlinking it then gives you the option. Click on one of those if you would, Philip, and this to show the different options where you can say it should pull a pop-up that says, oh, it didn't actually. I thought it pulled does it pull a pop-up to say what you can remove files, or is that in a machine? So there's a way where you can.
When you're machines, yeah.
Okay. So when you do that, you can actually choose, unlink, and then you can choose whether to remove the file. So this is what when we were talking about remotely wiping the device or controlling the devices to which people can have access. This is one of the ways in which, as an organizational admin, you can do that. So if this employee had left or this device got stolen, you could click this, and it would automatically then remove the files and access.
Sure.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure to connect those dots for everybody.
Absolutely. So again, the ability, in addition to accounts, accounts are known users. These are users within my organization. There is also a time when, unlike other products that are out there, I may have the need to share temporarily with a user or set of users some documents. So I can always, with this system, I can create a guest account, which is going to allow a user to have a short-term account, which I can limit their permissions as to what they can access. And additionally, I can set up the guest account settings. In fact, I can limit this account to only being good for 30 days or 60 days, if there's a period of time that I want that. I can also configure these users to be read-only users or to perhaps only be able to upload files as well. Coming over to here, what Nathan was getting to is we have this granular control over the different machines. And so in this count, we now have exactly one machine, Svenloff, which is my machine that we're working on now, which I just mapped. So you can see that we just added that today, and that all the files are synced. I'll also be able to, as Nathan indicated, I can unlink this at any time. And actually at the end here, I'll do that, and you'll kind of see what it looks like on the user side as well. We no longer have any mobile devices there. I think we removed that iPad that Nathan had synced there.
I'm going to connect it up here in just a minute, too, so you can see it.
Sounds great. Sounds great. So moving on, we have this a concept of shares. And shares are really just shared folders within the sync tool context. However, unlike shared files or a normal simple having an individual user create a file, I have the ability when I create a share to provide access as to who gets access to those files. So as I click here into the Team Share Marketing Team, I can see that this user demo, which is the one context we're logged into, has access via the web and by a web DAV, which is a method of doing map drives over the internet. But I can see that Svenlof nor any future machines have the ability to view this shared folder. So this is useful in the set that Nathan was talking about earlier in his introduction, where not only can I limit who has access to the information, but also from what devices. So in this case, because the future devices box was not checked, when I added my account just a few moments ago to Svenlof, I did not have access to those folders for the marketing team share. We'll go ahead and click that. There's also an option which, for those who have worked with the other tools that are out there, when we're working with Word and Excel files have the ability to indicate by some technical file properties whether or not the file is currently in use by another user or not. And you can encounter problems where two people are trying to edit the file at the same time. The file sync tool propagates that information about file locking to all the shared users. So that if I were to go into a Word file and someone else were to open it, they wouldn't, even though the two files they're looking at are on copies on two different machines, they would get the information saying the file was currently being worked on with me. So that's another method of that revision control and making sure we don't worry about those the multi-copy locked problems.
And that's definitely something that I know that, because even I've used Dropbox in the past to collaborate across our organization when there's been peers or vendors and actually a couple times customers over the years. And that has been a problem where you get multiple revisions or you get multiple problems there. So if you're collaborating with a team, especially in team shares, and the intent of those shares is for a team to work on the same documents, that is a nice feature set so you don't end up having one person save a file and another person overwrite that same file, and then you don't capture necessarily the change data. So thanks for pointing that out, Philip.
Absolutely. So also when we're doing this, we have to have ability to audit what's happening, who's accessing what, and what's going on. So of course, this system is going to audit by username all the actions that are occurring from an organizational basis. So anyone who's linked or unlinked a folder or a file, and then on the granular machine level for the users themselves, we can also find out what files were updated as well. I want to come back to the dashboard here for just a moment to go over and discuss some of the other features I may have available. We have, in fact, created this organization called Mytech U, but if I had a larger group and I wanted to create sub-organizations, I'm able to do that as well. So I can create sub-organizations underneath my primary organization to distribute out the file sharing capabilities. This could be useful if I had different organizational units where I may want my sales manager to be able to manage the files for the people in their group, and I may have a different group that wants to share their files. Or sometimes there are different parts of the organization that really ought not be have any kind of cross-pollination between their groups, maybe one branch or another.
And I think the key reason why you would use this, Philip, and you mentioned it, but just to kind of hammer it home a little bit to reinforce the message, is that having a sub-organization also gives you the level, it's a permissioning level, which you mentioned, right? So let's say I wanted to have the department heads have control of their respective, it doesn't have to be a complete organization, but their department. I can create a different organization, organizational unit, subunit, that then they can be an admin, so they can have this visibility, which Philip's showing here right now, of just their team, their department, and then they could have sub-users underneath that. So, but you as an organizational level admin would be able to view all of that, not only at the top level, but as well as the sub-organizations. You could have multiple levels of administrative control and access, so that way your IT person or whatever your global admin wouldn't have to necessarily manage those different groups or those different departments. So that would be one of the reasons why you might choose to do that or not.
Absolutely. So kind of the last thing I really want to demonstrate here is that we discussed how I have my marketing team now since I added myself permissions on that group, and I can see these files here as part of my synced folder. But again, I just want to demonstrate the consequences of if I do have a machine, and in this case I have mapped my Svenloft computer to that. If I choose to unlink that and I ask it to remove the files from my user machine, what we're going to see here is that this file, provide the magic works, and in fact it does, we'll see that that sync tool folder has disappeared and I no longer have access to those files. To follow up that from a security standpoint, my administrator, if they so desired, could in fact prevent me from adding that back in, which gives me that, again, the ability to remove people from my organization if they're no longer with me, and get back that information that could potentially be out there.
So Philip, one of the things that I know that we don't have any set up in here as far as reports and alerts, but I know that in the reports section that you can also set up some alerts, and even in the policies when you go into settings, yeah, you can dig into what are the type of information you want to know relative to the organization. This could help you, see like if there's problem users, the different counts if people are adding too many users, make sure for just all the kind of stuff that you might want to know about the organization. And as an admin, there may be some things that you're concerned about, especially when you're talking about storage consumption, space utilization, storage overview, et cetera. Those are the things that, as you use this over time, that could be critical to just maintaining and keeping your costs under management and your staff. So, we haven't entitled it, but those are just alerts that are nice so that you don't have to necessarily actively be checking that information, but you could set it up on a recurring schedule and have that information sent out. And you could set that up for department admins if you had created them in different organizations, in different organizational subunits. So there's a lot of stuff you can do from a management perspective. So as you can see, Philip walking through that. That's some of the key pieces that we wanted to show in the synchronization tool from not only a local user perspective but an admin perspective. So at this point, I think that I wanted to. We've gone back, and did you show guest accounts, Philip, as well? I don't remember if I saw.
I don't know. Let's take a look at that. So guest accounts, again, these are the purpose of a guest account is for those organizations where you, for those instances where you may have non-employees or that you need to provide access to the information on a temporary basis. So these users don't count against your allocation of named users. However, they're limited in how they can access files. So in this case, they can only access through the web interface, and they don't have access to be able to synchronize with their devices. But it's a great tool when you need to. A good example of using this is if you need to share a number of files that perhaps with someone that you may be actively changing. You can provide them a link to the file or folder that you're working on, and they may only have download rights, but you can continue to update the contents of it as we move forward. So it's the benefits are that those guests get the full reporting, activity, and encryption tools, and you can remove their access at any time. So in those instances where you need to share information with people in a private way, this can be another kind of tool in the toolbox. So at this point, I think that kind of wraps up what I wanted to show us today. There's lots of other features as well.
One last thing, Philip. Sorry to interject real quick, but could you click Create Guest Account? And I wanted to. I think there's something I believe that's under this screen. Actually, no. Forgive me. It's when you give them access as far as being able to expire links. That's what I was wanting to demonstrate as far as expiring that. But there's a section. I can't remember if that was under Guest Accounts or not. But there's a section when you're adding users and adding access to files where you can actually expire access to that information. So you can set a time frame where it's good for 7 days or good for just 30 days or whatever. So you can actually explain where that is. So there's a lot of stuff you can do there. But so I agree, Philip. Let's go ahead and move I see what as you're completing that. I do want to come back to the summary because, as you can tell, normally our Mytech U sessions are about education about the technology, and that's what we tried to make it. But we also wanted to educate you about, Mytech has worked to put this offering together for our customers because we see pain being experienced in the file sync space. Where our customers are expressing concern. They know it's being used, but they don't know if there are answers out there. And so go ahead and click on those, Philip, to pull those in. So I definitely just wanted to summarize and say, hey, be aware that this is most likely happening on your network and your environment today, and that there are things you can do about it. There are things that you should be concerned about. If you're not concerned about some of those things and you want to allow your staff to use the free tools, fine, that's your decision. But we want to do, our job is to educate you about some of the risks and the threat vectors that are out there, and those are things that we definitely wanted to identify in the key risk variables here that we've talked about multiple times. So being able to deal with those variables there as far as, encryption of the data, understanding and being able to control the devices and the users, and who has access to the information, as well as getting rid of the remote device wiping in the event of a loss or stolen or an employee exit. And then the things that you really should be able to expect from business class options that are out there, and the tool that we've presented is the Mytech Sync tool. Cross compatibility, again, just the different types of devices you may have, Mac and PC, as well as iOS and Android tablets. And then being able to collaborate with vendors, customers, and having guest access is something that's pretty huge to be able to control that level of connection. The other feature that we like to point out that's really nice is just the custom branding. It's not just some third-party tool that's out there. Even though it is a third-party tool, you can make it look and feel like your organization to make your customers and vendors feel more comfortable interacting with you, that this is something you've put some effort into integrating into your operations. And then, of course, version management, file locks that Philip had mentioned, because when you're collaborating, that happens. One of the pieces that we didn't really touch on too much in the presentation because it's difficult to show, but you can actually enable this synchronization across file shares on your server. So if you have a mobile user and one of the frustrations they experience is slow connection because they work out of a place in northern Minnesota and they don't have access to good bandwidth, but you want them to be able to work off your files off your server, you can enable file server enablement. So we can actually not only synchronize files from their machine to the cloud, but we can actually synchronize files from your server to that user. So we can basically enable your file server to sync to that end user via this tool. So that's what file server enablement means. Some cool functionality there as well. And then, of course, the Active Directory integration to simplify management on both the end user experience as well as the IT admins. So that's an overview. I definitely want to thank everyone for attending today, as well as those who will be watching in the future. There were several questions that came up throughout the presentation that I was able to answer offline. But if you have further questions, we can definitely set up a time to dig into your individual questions, as well as one of the things that we feel is really important is being able to allow you to test this. So if you're interested in a trial and saying, hey, does this make sense for me? I don't know if this would work for me, but maybe I'd like to play with it for 30 days. We have that process available as well, so you can make sure that it's something that would be viable for you before you say that, yes, let's do this or make a change from what we're currently doing. So thank you very much. Philip, any final comments?
Nope, I think that's it. I hope we provide some good information for folks, and I'm more than happy to assist anyone else if they'd like to see more. Again, as Nathan said, go ahead and get a hold of us on the contact information on the screen now.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.